want a bribe. So this is a video on how elites can justify victory, because right now elites, they're not really doing the thing they used to, which was being the job creators. Now they are bragging about being the job destroyers, and I feel like with a little bit of a messaging change, we could really fix that. Or at least make them sound less evil and allow them to get the job done, assuming the job is to actually help people and not just destroy the world. So, first, we want a bribe. So after World War II, Americans, not all Americans obviously, but a very large number of Americans essentially got a bribe. We got our own little house in the middle of nowhere. Of course, it was in the middle of nowhere to get the veterans out of the town or the city to not riot or rebel. But those people got education, they got a house, they got a car, they got a family, they got all these other things. And so, all I'm going to be arguing is that if the objective is destruction beyond our borders, there needs to be something nice within our borders. Now, one of the things that's kind of a problem for a lot of people is that the birth rates are declining. Now, this is not necessarily 100% a problem in every situation, but when this is global, as it is becoming, it is a little concerning because we don't know who's going to pay for the old people, unless, of course, we are taxing the elites, but they don't really want that. So how are we going to get around this? Well, we're just going to keep having the birth rates go down, and we're going to end up in a situation where it's only diapers for baby boomers. No diapers for babies, you know? And it's not just this one product, it's going to be all of the products. They're only going to be geared towards the oldest members of society. So there is an easy solution with minimal damage, and the solution is micronations. So this is related to the previous video on this channel, where I talked about a known 2010 plan, which we didn't seem to go with. I'm not really sure why, but I'm not all the way at the top. I just went to school with a lot of rich, powerful, and well-connected people, or at least the children of those people. So if the goal is, in fact, 1 billion fewer humans, or just kind of looking at the amount of fertilizer we have in the world and how that allows the number of humans to increase. Like, for example, without fertilizer, we would only have half the world population we have now. So it's not really a reduction of 1 billion. It's more like a reduction of 4 billion people. But yeah, that's a little concerning. So we're not going to look at that. We're just going to assume that's not actually the goal. And if it is, hopefully the second half of this will allow us to deal with that in a way that isn't terrifyingly horrible. So the main population pays the extra cost, because remember, we're going to be talking about micronations. So micronations or microstates, people sometimes get them confused. I'm not going to go into all that nonsense. The point is, we're going to be creating small political entities, which are basically like towns or counties, or sometimes even states, if is a very large micronation. And we can get to that later. But the main point is that the main population, the people who live outside the micronation in the main part of society that we all live in right now, because there are no micronations in existence in the US, the main population would be paying the extra cost. So right now we're kind of swimming in debt, and the whole system is based on debt, and this would add even more debt to that, which might be a problem, but you know, if you have 10,000% debt or 1,000,000% debt, it's not really a big difference until someone eventually is like, hey man, you got to pay up, right? So 10 to 20% of the people would live in the micronations with funds. Obviously at the beginning, you would only have like 1,000 people. You wouldn't have like 10 million people or even 60 million people. Like that's, we're not there yet. We're right now just focusing on the concept of putting some people in the micronations. So this is a way to be paid to exist the way that we want. Now you might be thinking, if this is about some group of elites that control everything, that are trying to wipe out all the humans, why would we get to exist the way that we want? Well, not all of us want the same things. Some people want to have kids, some people never want to have kids, some people just want money, other people are like, I just want freedom, you know? And it's not only those 4 things, I think it was 4 things I mentioned, but there's a lot of other stuff. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to make these micronations, and we're going to reduce the population by 1,000 per year. So that means if you start a micronation with 1,000 people, the maximum is 1,000 people, because almost all of these micronations will be designed to shrink. And so that means when there's no one in the micronation anymore, we simply turn it into a park for 500 years, allow everything to regenerate, and then at the end of the 500 years, we look at it and we're like, what is this for? What do we want to redevelop this as? Because it might be the land is actually Florida swampland and it's just water. In which case, we're probably not going to put a lot of time, energy, and money into fixing it up. Although maybe we will, because maybe it's a great place for an airport right next to a very urban center. I don't know. Ejected if oldest out of alignment with lowest level rule. So in these micronations, we are going to be reducing the population. And the way we're going to be reducing the population is we're going to say that you are the oldest person out of alignment with the lowest level rule. So that means if the first rule for the micronation is that everyone needs to be under 100 years old, we're just going to say, look, you're 105, you got to move like 5 minutes to the east and get out of this micronation. And so that's kind of rude, of course, but if you're in that situation and another person isn't following the second rule, like, for example, if we change this up a little bit, we said, you got to be under 100, and there was a person who was 99 that turned 100. Like, they would be first on the list to leave, even though there might be some other rules later that says you have to have a certain number of kids, or you need to act in a certain way, or you need to have done something in the past, or you need to like have some goal for the future. This would just say the oldest rule, you know, which is the lowest level rule. If you're out of alignment with that, you're gone. You're going to get ejected. Like, this isn't about dying. This isn't about some sort of punishment. I mean, we'll get to that later. But the rules are for people who are 40 plus. So, for example, if there is a rule that says you got to have at least one kid, we're not going to apply that to the people who are 1 year old, right? Because that doesn't make sense. Like, it's not possible for them to have a kid, and it's also not ethical. And so what we're doing is we're saying, if you're 40 and you've been collecting money, because remember, these people are living in the micronations with funds, like they're just getting money. And so if you're 40 years old and you're still not following the rules, you you might get in trouble. And so because we have these two things, the old people in the micronation are never going to be above 100. So that means even if every 100 years of real life, we are able to extend the maximum lifetime of a human by 1 year on average, you know, we might have some people who live to be 200, but we're still going to kick them out halfway through their life. We're just going to say, nope, you're done. If we don't figure out any form of life extension, you know, some of these rules probably aren't going to matter, because it's like, oh no, I'm 65. Like, you know, if you're dying at that point, like, it doesn't, nothing really happens. But 40 is really good because by that point, you know, you have enough time to think about it, and if you really don't want to follow the rules, or if it's just not going to be possible for you to do so, you'll like know when you're leaving, you know. But it won't necessarily be exactly as you're 40, because if we're only removing the people who are out of alignment with the lowest level rule, it might be we introduce another rule, and so you could be 45, have 0 kids, and if there's a rule to have at least 1 kid, then the person who's leaving first is the one who's 95 with no kid, or the person who's 70 with no kid. Like, even if you're 45 and you're over this 40 limit, whenever there's a new rule added, you're still going to have some time to follow the rule if you want to. And so what this is going to do is it's going to create an actual population pyramid, rather than, you know, the population pyramid we have right now, which is just like a big block. We're going to have an actual triangle, which is quite good. So the punishment of leaving the micronation is rejoining society. So if you get ejected, you have to rejoin society like the rest of us. You know, the thing we already live in. So there's no real punishment at all, other than the fact that regular society will get taxed a little bit more heavily. Now, this is great because it also means we don't really need to worry about immigration as much, because, you know, people show up and they just pay extra taxes. Sorry. Yeah, just remember the punishment is you rejoin the rest of society, that thing we already live in. Main population of mostly 40 to 60. So why would the main population, this thing where we're drawing all the people from, be between 40 and 60? That's kind of weird, right? Because these rules are applying to people who are 40 and up. So what's with the 60? Well, up next we have a new type of micronation, which is the one-child micronation. This requires you to be at least 60 years old to join. And we're going to aim for the people who are as close to 60 as possible. Like if you're 128, like we're not bringing you into this location because realistically speaking, you're not going to last long anyway, because nobody's ever lived that long. And so this is just going to give people an option to retire in a place where they're automatically going to be receiving extra funds, and they're not going to be voting in the rest of regular society. And so this means the main chunk of society, which is going to be 40 to 60-year-olds, I'm not saying this is going to be 100% of the population, but it's going to be a larger chunk than the rest of the population pretty much forever. Because we're cutting off the bottom of the population, and we're also cutting off the top of the population. So what remains in the middle will outvote the youngest and oldest every time. The reason this is a one-child micronation, we are going to apply the one-child policy. We're not going to do like the forced sterilization and all that other nonsense. This project isn't about really forcing anyone to do anything. It's just giving them a suggestion. And so you can still have a kid, but if you have more than one kid, or you join a one-child micronation, you and your descendants are not allowed to leave for 5 generations. So you're probably stuck in there, although you're going to be getting money the whole time you're in there. So again, it's like, it's not really the worst thing ever. Like you're living in a place, but you're technically not allowed to leave unless you follow the rules. But like you're only allowed in if you plan on following the rules anyway. Like this is just an easy way to clear out a bunch of the people who are not going to live much longer and are probably going to vote for their own self-interest because, you know, that's what most humans will, in theory, do at some point. Specialist. Now, we're mostly going to focus on the young people for the rest of this because not every micronation is specifically designed for old people. In fact, that's somewhat unusual. So the specialist micronation is simply taking one of the standard micronations that reduces at a population of 1,000 per year. So if you have 100,000, it takes 100 years to get down to 0. The specialist micronation will reduce at 100 rather than 1,000. And so the reason for that is because the specialist micronation will be for a specific purpose. So we could have a specialist micronation that just focuses on sending people into the military at the lowest, like at the very lowest rung of the ladder. And so what that means is the rest of society, you know, these people who are paying all this extra money, they aren't going to have to serve as a private or whatever the lowest level enlisted man is. They're going to be at least one level above that. And so that means if there is ever a war, the people in the specialist micronation are going to be the people who pay the ultimate price before everybody else. And so they get to live a much nicer life, and they are basically guaranteed to have a family, and you know, all these other things are going to come to them much easier than they would for everybody else. But whatever the cost is when they actually get ejected from the micronation is going to be much greater, because they're not just going to rejoin society, they're going to have to pay with something. So for each specialist micronation, the number of years that the micronation has been a specialist micronation is the number of days that you will be required to serve in a certain capacity. So for example, if it is a military one and it's existed for 100 years, you will have to serve in the military for 100 days. Now, at first, these people are going to be somewhat crappy recruits because, you know, they're all going to be 100, right? Well, no, because remember, we already dealt with that when it was a standard micronation. And so the specialist micronation is an upgrade that you can do later. Now, it doesn't have to be just for the military. It might be that the micronations for old people, they don't have enough caregivers. And so maybe we're just going to have a specialist micronation that sends people to these micronations for old people, but we just send them there earlier. And so their objective when they go there is to care for the elderly. And so this way they get to have a family and care for the elderly and get paid both times. So it's not really a bad deal. And, if they follow all the rules, eventually one of their descendants will make it back into the rest of society, where they will have to pay the extra money, but they're going to pick up so much money along the way that they're probably going to rejoin as upper class, right? So there's no real problem there. The specialist micronation can be especially useful for interacting with other nations. Now, you might have thought I was talking about that when I was talking about the military, but if, for example, there's a country like India that just overproduces men or sons, we can easily balance that out. We can have a specialist micronation where it's like everyone's going to have 2 sons and 4 daughters, and then we're just going to kick out 2 of the daughters. And so that way, you will have a huge influx of women. And so if we have another micronation off to the side where all the extra women go, or maybe they just go to this micronation for old people, we don't have to worry, once again, about the immigrants. I'm not saying we do have to focus or fear immigrants in the first place, but oftentimes there are a lot of people who get upset by men from another country coming to their place. And so if we're sending them to take care of the old people, and we're also sending a bunch of additional women to that location, the people are not going to be forced to get together, but they're going to be more likely to do so. And so that's just another benefit of a potential specialist micronation. You can really adjust it however you want because it's a specialist micronation. You're just going to reduce the population by 100 people per year rather than 1,000. And so just as a reminder, this isn't, when I say reducing by 1,000 or reducing by 100, that doesn't mean we are taking 1,000 or 100 people from one location and sending them somewhere else. It means if the region has a population maximum, and so if you have one person over that, or 1,000 people over that, or even 10,000 people over that, anything over the limit is the number of people that have to leave. Up next is the native micronation. So again, this is optional. This does not actually form from a specialist micronation, one of the ones for the old people or one of the standard ones. The native micronations, these are going to be for Native Americans or American Indians or whatever other name you want to go with. And the native micronations, instead of decreasing by 1,000 or 100, they will decrease by 10. But they won't decrease by 10 in the same way as the others. So for these native micronations, what we're going to do is we're going to ask all the tribes, hey, is anybody interested in this? And the tribe that is the most okay with this is going to be the tribe that joins and has this thing set up. And so the way it's set up is that every year we give the micronation 1 additional square mile of territory. And so if there's a tribe that doesn't have any territory in the first place, this is going to be a way for them to actually get some land. And so the way that we reduce the population is by saying every member of the tribe is a legitimate member of the tribe. And they can add like a blood quantum if they want or whatever. Or if they already have it, that's fine. But all we're going to do is we're going to reduce the maximum number of potential people in the tribe by 10 per year. And so this means for the much larger tribes like the Navajo or the Cherokee, they might exist for like 100,000 years. So, that would be like 100,000 square miles of additional territory, which is a lot. And over that time, they're also going to be getting additional funds. So, that could be quite profitable. So this serves both communities quite well because the main population is kind of annoyed that there are all these special groups in different places that are supposed to be getting additional stuff, but they're not going to. And then, it's also kind of crappy for the natives because it's like, bro, you took all our stuff. So this is not something that every tribe is forced to do. At most, we're going to have 1 tribe per year that gets, into the situation. It's just going to be whichever tribe is the most interested. And maybe in the future, we might even add groups that aren't native tribes. Like maybe the Amish will try this out. And so it's like, look, you get more farmland, you get paid the whole time, and, we're going to make sure that your people exist for thousands of years, maybe even hundreds of thousands of years, depending on how many people there are at the beginning. But now the one that you've all been waiting for, the one that I said this channel is for, because it's profitable birth rate. So how are we going to make this profitable? Because right now we're just talking about taking money from one group of people and giving it to another group of people. Well, the international micronation works in a similar way. Instead of reducing by 1,000 or by 100 or by 10, it reduces by 1. So if you've got, 2,000 people, it's going to take you 1,000 years to get down to that 1,000 in terms of the population maximum. So if we start with 500,000, it's going to be there pretty much forever. But the way that the international micronation makes money is we will make a deal with another country. We will say we will take in 1,000 people from your country. So, 500 men, 500 women, probably both between 20 and 30, maybe 20 and 40. You never know. And we're going to say that eventually everyone in that micronation is going to be descendants of that group of people. And so we're going to take a native or a specialist or just a regular micronation that has agreed to be part of this. And we're just going to introduce a small population of people from that country. So, for example, Japan. We're just going to say, look, all you got to do is send us 1,000 Japanese people, and we will send you Japanese people forever. Because if a person is not descended from people from that other country, in this example, Japan, they will just rejoin American society, just like normal. But if they have ancestry from that other country, in this example Japan, they will go back to that country. And so we're going to be focusing on a location that is already designed to churn out additional people, because the 4 basic rules at the beginning are be under 100 years old, have at least 1 kid, have at least 2 kids, have at least 3 kids. And so that way the population will always be increasing. And the people who don't follow the rules are going to be the ones that leave. So it's going to be, kind of like the Amish I mentioned up here. The Amish will offer people a chance to check out the rest of the world, and if they like it more, they can leave and just join the rest of society. And so what this is going to do is that's going to supercharge that, because everyone's just going to be rejoining society, and it's going to keep churning out people indefinitely. And so all we need to do in order to make money on this is we just request money from the other nation in exchange for people going back to their country of origin. So this would mostly be useful, not for Japan right now, but for the Gulf countries, for example, countries that don't have a problem with the birth rate right now, they don't have some serious decline, but they do have a lot of money. So, for example, Norway, with its ridiculous sovereign wealth fund, could get into something like this. Although, obviously, this doesn't exist, this doesn't exist, this doesn't exist, this doesn't exist, and this doesn't exist. So there's a long way to go before we get to this point. But not actually that long. This could definitely be doable within 100 years. And so we would just say hi to, whoever's the most well-funded that is worried about their future, 500 years down the line. And then we just make a place where everyone's going to be at least 1% descended from the people of that other location. And I do need to clarify here that there are some nations that will change their ethnic makeup over time. For example, in modern Germany, there are a lot of people from Turkey or Iran or Syria. And so whenever you establish this international micronation, the people are going to be drawn from the population that already exists in your place. And so it would be better to get into this earlier rather than later, because it's going to be adjusted. But if a country wants, they could also always just send another 1,000 people. They could say, look, we're going to pay additional money, we're going to update our genetic material. And so that way, if Germany, for example, signed up to one of these international micronations and sent, 1,000 very ethnically German white people that speak German, everything is German, in the way that it was 100 years ago. Maybe not exactly 100 years ago, because, that's roughly around World War II, although that's more like 80 years. But the point is, whenever you push people into the zone, the population is going to become more like that, because that's going to be the newest rule of staying. You have to be part of that group in order to stay. But anyways, That's pretty much it for how to make the birth rate profitable. You just create a special zone with 10 to 20% of the population, although not all of them in each one. So really, you're just creating a special zone or a special type or group of zones. You're scattering them around the country, and we're just doing a little bit of eminent domain while allowing the people to stay there and receive additional money while doing so. So eventually, all the people get kicked out. But when they get kicked out, they have a much higher birth rate than the average citizen. And so the way to make money is to send the people with a much higher birth rate that are ethnically of people of that other country back to the country that is requesting more humans. So, if you want to talk, or if you want me to talk about something else on this channel, we could talk about how to make a profitable border wall next time. But in reality, you should probably just go check out my main channel, The Postgrad Year, where I'm going to talk about education reform. And that just feels like a much easier thing to talk about, which actually seems more doable, and people probably won't get as angry about. So anyways, thank you for watching. Sorry this one was so long, and let me know if you want the next one. All right, bye.